Usually get cut off. I'll say it again. Welcome everybody around the world. I wanted to make a more, quicker to the point video. The one I made earlier today was like half an hour. It doesn't need to be that long, so I've got the audio clips ready. The proof right here. Donald Trump was the first president in American history to be impeached twice. Okay? And they better have had a darn good reason, a valid, legal reason to get him impeached that second time. Okay? I wouldn't even talk about the first time right now, but the one that just happened. What were the grounds that they used to get Trump impeached on? It was that he incited the riot attack that happened at the White House. Okay? There are so many clips out there of the major news networks, Democrats out there at microphones, at podiums, sometimes shouting, talking loud. In either case, they're all accusing Trump of inciting that attack. That he caused it to happen, he incited it. They were so enraged at this that they went on to pursue impeachment, and they succeeded. Okay, so that is what has transpired. So their grounds for him to be impeached, which is unprecedented, never happened before in all the hundreds of years America's existed. Their grounds, like I said, was that he incited that attack. But unlike what, the media won't do the following. The media won't actually play the clip of what Trump actually said. And you know why? Because if they did, anybody with half a brain would be able to see that he didn't incite anything. In fact, his words that he used were quite the opposite. So, anyways, don't listen to me. Let's actually listen to what Trump said himself. But first, just to show the contrast, I want to show what the news networks, this is the first one I grabbed. They're not even hyped up. Just a random selection, completely random, of what the news networks are saying about this. Just like 30 seconds, okay? And how they're just saying it like it's a fact of day, like a matter of fact, clear as day, that Trump incited the violence and he's legally, susceptible, to being punished or whatever, right? So just listen to what they have to say, and then I'm going to play the clip of what Trump actually said, okay? This is from ABC News here.
And for more now on the president's role in this week's deadly siege on the Capitol, we bring in ABC News contributor.
See, they just fan over those words. The president's role in the deadly siege on the U.S. Capitol. Like, when you're using words like that, you're portraying to all America, to young children, and to the world, a country of absolute chaos, where a president causes a deadly attack on the Capitol building. Those are powerful words. You had better be sure that you know what you're talking about before you make such slanderous and ridiculous accusations. But let's listen to what, just a random example, and this is from ABC News, right? Let's hear how they present this scenario, and then we're going to play Trump's clip, what he actually said.
And for more now on the president's role in this week's deadly siege on the Capitol, we bring in ABC News contributor Kate Shaw, constitutional law professor at Cardozo Law. Right. Thanks so much for joining us, Kate. Now, the president encouraged his supporters this week with words like, "You'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength." Do you think that President Trump committed any crime here? And what about protections for free speech?
I think he possibly did commit incitement to violence. I think there's at least a real case that he did.
So that's what the media said, right? I'm just going to play it again, that last 10 seconds, right? Of her question and then her answer there, right? Do you think the president, just so people can hear it twice once isn't enough, right?
I think he possibly did commit incitement.
Hold up.
Yes, you have to show strength. Do you think that President Trump committed any crime here? And what about protections for free speech?
I think he possibly did commit incitement to violence. I think there's at least a real case that he did. And in terms of protection for speech, the First Amendment is typically viewed as a protection that we as private citizens have against the government. So it protects us from the government repressing our speech if say, it doesn't like it. But it's not ordinarily something we think of as the government possessing. So it would be unusual as a matter of the Constitution for the president to say he's immune from the consequences of his speech because of the First Amendment. It's just not typically how the Constitution works.
So here she is rambling fancy words. Constitution, Constitution. Trump could get in trouble for what he said. They're here presenting it like he incited the Capitol attack, the deadly Capitol attack. Now let's listen to what Trump said at the very speech that he's gotten impeached for, okay? Listen to what Trump said.
But here is Exhibit A, again from last Wednesday, when he was speaking to a very peaceful assembly of Trump supporters.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
That's what he said. That's what Donald Trump got impeached over. Because I don't know any other way to put it, but the Democrats and the media have literally just lied through their teeth, portrayed a false scenario. They haven't even bothered to play the clips of what he said. I don't know how they pull it off and convince people. You know what I mean? You lie enough times, I guess people believe it. But they actually convince people that Trump incited the deadly attack. So everybody in their imaginations is thinking, what did Trump possibly say? And of course he must be guilty because it's evil Donald Trump. And they got him impeached. But what he actually said, we just heard it, right? Let's listen to it again. What did Trump actually say? Hold on.
Lie about it. But here is Exhibit A, again from last Wednesday, when he was speaking to a very peaceful assembly of Trump supporters.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
So where in that do you hear anything about inciting violence? Where in what Donald Trump said is there any grounds to claim that he incited violence or a deadly attack? Where? How did Donald Trump get impeached because of that statement? That's ridiculous. How could they possibly impeach him because of this? You know what I mean? It's absolutely ludicrous. He literally got impeached because they claim he incited the deadly attack on the Capitol building. We just heard like 3 times now what he actually said. So you tell me, how did he get impeached, right? So, but let's listen to what Pelosi said about it, okay? This is what the Democrats are saying. This is how Pelosi puts it in her words, what Donald Trump's guilt is here, right?
Wednesday, the President of the United States incited a deadly insurrection against America that targeted the very heart of our democracy.
This woman has just claimed, because it's a claim, okay, might be true, might not be true, but she has claimed that the president of a country has just incited a deadly attack against that country's Capitol building. That's what she has just said, right? Let's listen to her say it again. She says it so casually, right?
Wednesday, the President of the United States incited a deadly insurrection against America that targeted the very heart of our democracy, this temple of democracy.
So really, Donald Trump incited a deadly insurrection. Really, Donald Trump did. He incited a deadly insurrection. How? By saying...
Lie about it. But here is Exhibit A, again from last Wednesday, when he was speaking to a very peaceful assembly of Trump supporters.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. That's all he said. That's all he said. But yet Pelosi can come out.
Wednesday, The President of the United States incited a deadly insurrection against America that targeted the very heart of our democracy.
So by saying, go and peacefully and patriotically let your voices be heard, which is what? The very blood of America, right? The very backbone of America. To make such a simple statement, go and peacefully, his instruction was to be peaceful, to peacefully and patriotically let your voices be heard. He didn't say protest. He didn't say riot. Did he use those words? To make such a simple statement has been labeled by Pelosi as that. I think it's absolute lunacy. How could they get away with this? It's absolute madness. And here, I actually have a longer portion of Trump's actual speech here. In case anybody thinks that I clipped it short, this is what Trump said. Now, let's just play the clip. The long answer to this, made short, is that just like they did with the first impeachment, because there was no quid pro quo according to the transcript of the actual phone call, which is publicly available. Anybody could see that. They ended up getting him impeached by a broader thing, which was abuse of power. In this here, he didn't actually, just like last time, he didn't commit quid pro quo. So they had to get him on abuse of power, a blanket term, so you could throw anything into the bucket, you know what I mean? And now, because he didn't actually incite any violence at all, right? You can't really, I mean, in all fairness, I honestly don't know how he got impeached, right? But just common sense, there's no way he could be impeached for saying that. There's no way. So my logic is the only way he actually did get impeached right now is that they threw more blanket stuff into the bucket. So they just said, oh, well, for weeks now he's been denying the results and yada yada. You know what I mean? That's what I'm leaning towards. That would at least make more sense. But you can't impeach somebody because they disagree with the result of something. That's a little ridiculous. Again, he got impeached because, and Pelosi, and they all say it and fought for it, they got him impeached because he supposedly incited violence. So here's a longer portion of Trump's speech there, right? In this segment, he will actually say the part that I just played, the little short clip, right? So here we go. This is about 20 seconds, okay? So a broader spectrum of what he said at that time, okay?
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country,
So that's what he said, right? So what's wrong in what he said there? Everything he said is actually perfectly good to say. It's actually a nice and noble thing to say, right?
Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country.
What's wrong with that? If you're to demonize and impeach every person who said a statement like that, I think every American president would have been impeached. You know what I mean? So anyways, that's all I need to say. I don't need to keep waffling on. But I do want to end on this note here. If you look up the definition in Merriam-Webster dictionary of fascism, okay? Because everybody the left loves to label Trump and his followers as like fascists and supremacists and all this and that there, right? Let's go look at fascism. Definition, okay? Definition 1 is a political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation and often race above the individual. And that stands for a centralized autocratic, which means they have basically unlimited power to do what they want, right? And it goes in hand with dictatorships. It usually goes in hand with an active dictator acting that autocratic power out, right? But so I'll read that again. A political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation and often, but not always, race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. And definition 2 is a tendency toward or actual exercise of strong autocratic or dictatorial control. Okay, so, those definitions don't hit you right in the face like, okay, well, what's your point, right? Well, my point is this. In the definition of fascism, we see that's a big paragraph. But when you identify the core factors of it, right? It's a political philosophy. Well, there's lots of those. A movement or regime. Okay, fine, right? That exalts a nation. Well, every country exalts their own nation, right? Even above the individual. I think that's fair to say every country does that. You put America first. You put any country first. You know what I mean? Above the individual, right? So there's nothing unique about that. What are the unique identifying factors that make fascism fascist? Okay? Well, it's where you have a centralized autocratic government, for example, usually headed by a dictator. Okay? Now, while the Democrats don't necessarily have autocratic power necessarily, and they don't necessarily have a dictator, okay? It would be petty to also argue that they show signs of that. Who cares? I'm not even going to get into that. But we do see them leaning towards somewhat of a severe economic and social regimentation, because higher taxes for the rich, you're taking from the rich and giving to the poor. They blatantly, openly say this is a socialist platform and all this and that there. You even have, they basically endorsed all those riots that went through America, and the rioters were announcing proudly that they had Marxist beliefs, right? So you factor all these things in together, and the massive, like, $40 trillion plan that he's going to force upon all Americans, so forcing America to go into debt even further. You know what I mean? When you factor all this in, it's not directly severe economic and social regimentation. It's like indirect severe economic and social regimentation. And the Medicare type package that they. But anyways, getting well, that the most striking thing to me is where it says enforceable suppression of opposition. That's one of the key identifying factors of fascism. Okay, you can have a dictator, but it may not be a fascist dictator. Okay, you could have an autocratic government that actually leads a nation nobly. Okay, having autocratic power is only bad in the hands of a bad person. And a dictator could be a good dictator. You know what I mean? What really stands out, okay, is like where you have that economic social regimentation. But the other thing that makes it stand out is the forcible suppression of opposition. Okay? And that's where we see a very strong reflection in the Democrats right now, because never before in American history was anybody in the, living a life where you couldn't talk about a certain topic. Like, the topic, I can't even say the buzzword, because even if you mention key words, you can get in trouble. Like, you're not allowed to talk about the election results, okay, at all. Like, that censorship, which is being endorsed by the Democrats, right? All of that censorship, that is, I'm sorry, but a trait of forcible suppression of opposition. Right? What happened to democracy? What happened to allowing everybody to voice their opinion and freedom of speech? Nope. All that ends here with a Biden administration. What would that be? Fascism or not fascism? Take your pick. What is it more like? You're suppressing the opposition, right? The opposition feels that something went wrong. I have to watch my words, right? The opposition feels that things didn't go right. It's their human right to argue that. They took it to court. Supposedly they lost in court. Fine. They still have the right to argue it. You know what I mean? As long as they don't incite violence and whatever. But the important thing is you can't ignore this. As soon as you tip this first domino, it's going to be a massive domino effect. Once you start censoring some things, everything's going to be censored. And the more you start suppressing the opposition, the more you become a dictator. Okay? So, you know what I mean? I think it speaks for itself, right? Trump didn't do anything like this. Trump didn't silence anybody. It's funny because at the 2016 election when Hillary lost, there's many clips where Hillary and the rest of the Democrats, I think for months or up to a year, or possibly even after that, were literally verbatim whining on camera that he stole the election, right? And that he was illegitimate and blah, blah, that Trump was illegitimate and blah, blah, blah. There's tons of clips, all on public record, of them complaining about that and accusing him of stealing it. And it went in hand with Russian collusion, which they did up until his last day in office, accuse him of Russian collusion. Even though that got disproven in court and thrown out. Did that matter to them? No. So all of a sudden when Trump stuff goes to court and gets thrown out, he's not allowed to keep saying it, but they did. They did for 4 years. Biden's 4 years haven't even started yet, but they've already completely stomped and silenced all of Trump's side. That's a major red flag. That is a sign of fascism. Forcible suppression of opposition. How many people have lost their jobs, their livelihoods, all sorts of stuff because of where they politically stand or what they believe in. So, there you go, people. So you wanted Biden, now you got Biden. So anyways,